Hello guys, what's up? Welcome to a new video. In today's video, we are watching the evolution of Fortnite movement.
Since Fortnite Chapter 1, Fortnite has entirely overhauled the animations and feel of players' movements. They also added a ton of new mechanics, some of which are
a lot of them. Since Chapter 3, just all the new movements.
Loved by nearly all players, and some were hurdling, and this.
Oh yeah, that's
when Fortnite Battle Royale first released, there was one part of the movement that was honestly awful, but most people completely forgot about this. There's actually such little information on this. I actually had to tweet about it to find out if I was remembering it correctly. Back in 2017, yes, that was 8 years ago. We are all old.
God damn, 8 years ago I was a child. I don't know.
There could walk, sprint, or crouch. Now, you may think that's strange since there was no sprint back in Chapter 1, as that was added in Chapter.
The normal running was a sprint. That's really funny. You had to toggle that, I think.
Chapter 3, but no, there was an old version of sprint, which is actually now just modern running speed. In order to move...
Oh guys, and by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. The original creator of this video is this guy. Go and support him, and the original video link will be down in the description, so you guys can go and watch it. Let's go.
Again, what is now the base walking speed, you had to press and hold your sprint bind. For most people on keyboard and mouse, this was shift, which meant that your little finger was constantly pressing this button as they did every other action, which caused a ton of discomfort. If you didn't hold this down, you'd basically just walk around like a literal NPC. It wasn't until patch version 2.
And it was very, very, very slow. And guys, by the way, if I'm pausing the video too much, just tell me in the comments. I'm still learning about this whole React thing.
2.30, where this was switched to a toggle, meaning that once at the start of every match, you'd have to press this button to sprint, and then you'd automatically sprint for the rest of the match. Funnily enough, you can actually still do this walk in the current game by using the force walk bind in the movement section, and the only real reason you would ever...
The music behind this video is goddamn creepy. Why is that the
background music? To do this is if you use the Mystique skin, you can then wipe out an NPC, use the Mystique skin's emote, and then turn into the...
And by the way, this walk with mouse and keyboard, it's like kind of impossible, but with a controller, you just have to slightly push your joystick, and you're good to go. Like, seriously.
NPC, and then use the force walk option to pretend you were one of them. Now, if you wonder why you don't actually remember having to press the sprint bind over and over again,
it's very old.
Because you played console. In the original patch notes for the game's release version 1.6, they stated that they removed the toggle for sprinting in the console settings since sprint is always set to on for consoles. So for a period of time, console was clearly the meta. But for how long? Well, it wasn't until patch version...
and later on, PC players found a new issue with mouse and keyboard movement. They created something as double movement. I think this video will go on to explain about double movement. But with a controller, it was much easier to like look at a side and build while walking, actually.
5.10, 9 months later, where sprint by default was added as a setting. And it wasn't until version 12.10, 3 years later, where this was set to on by default for all players. I do imagine that for like an entire time, there were just new players to the game who would never turn sprint by default on up until Chapter 2.
That's impossible.
Season 2, and they were still holding their sprint bind or just walking everywhere in Fortnite for like 3 years. But what a lot of people forget about Chapter 1 is that you can actually crouch sprint. The regular crouching speed was...
I think it was kind of bug. And I remember that we could do it in Chapter 2. I don't know exactly, but I think that we could do it in Chapter 2.
Painfully slow, but by pressing the sprint button, you can actually crouch walk much faster. While recording this video, I did try to see if you could force walk while crouching to do this slower crouching speed, but it has since been removed, and I may be the first person to ever try this since then. But the early Fortnite movement actually was very controversial. Maybe not as controversial as the most recent changes, but a hidden mechanic had players using external software or tape and plastic to improve it.
This was the double movement that I was earlier on talking about.
Walking left and right, it was extremely difficult to place builds in front of you to both protect yourself and move at the same time when using keyboard and mouse. This was because pressing W and A or D made you walk at a 45-degree angle, which essentially made you move forwards towards the builds as well as walking to the side. This, though, was not an issue on controller. When moving with a joystick, controller players had a complete 360-degree movement, meaning that they could move faster to the left and to the right, and even swing around peaks faster than any keyboard mouse player ever could. Well, I'm told they realized you could just put some tape and plastic on your keyboard. By going into your binds and adding a second walk.
Back then, I never played on a keyboard, so I don't actually know how this works, like the tape and stuff.
Left or walked right movement bind, and pressing them both at the same time as walking forward, this would actually make your character move more to the side and less forwards.
I think eventually Epic Games added a setting for double movement just for PC keyboard players.
Movement keys at once was then
eventually. I think it was like a year ago or 2 years ago.
People didn't really want to press forward, A to walk to the left, and then another bind to walk A to the left again, using 3 fingers at once to do this. What they did instead was just put a piece of plastic on their keyboard and tape the 2 buttons together. So for example, if they wanted to walk more to the left, they taped the caps lock and the A button together, and then whenever they pressed A, both A and caps lock would be pressed. Then they had that sharper movement speed, meaning they could walk more to the left and build at the same time. But in reality, what most people did was just, in air quotations, macro. By using a key remapper, they could bind buttons like F7 and F8 to also have directional keys, and then remap these to A and D respectively. This would mean that when players pressed their A, they also pressed the button for F7.
Wow! Dude, I didn't know that. I just knew about double movement, but I didn't know that it was that deep. God damn.
And when they pressed D, they also pressed F8, essentially giving them the exact same double movement binds, but without putting tape on their keyboards. Now, this is very controversial, as many people thought this was cheating and that they could get banned for it. And things got even more confusing when keyboards like Wooting had this setting built in, and other software released specifically to change the angle and effect of how much you could move to each side. This became such a big talking point in the community that Epic Games even came out and defined what was and was not a macro. The spirit of our rules allow for players to reconfigure keybinds in a way that wouldn't
it was that deep of an issue? Wow. I didn't know that. I knew the double movement existed. I knew my friends used it. I didn't know it was that deep.
Possible inside the game, including double movement on keyboards. Using these tools to automate multiple actions, e.g. mapping a single button to place multiple build structures, however, is not...
Okay. Sorry for pausing the video too much, but man, I have to give credit to this guy. He has a full research on this. Wow, this guy is great. Wow, and the video looks neat. It looks very clean. I like the editing. I wish I could do that.
Not permitted.
Seriously.
Essentially, having one function on a button is fine,
very
but having more than one isn't, unless it's scroll reset, of course. Since you had to either buy a specific keyboard, download external softwares, or ruin your caps lock key with some tape to get double movement, Epic Games decided it was probably best we actually just add this setting into the game.
I told you. Yeah.
2 years later. In terms of timeline, double movement became popular in Chapter 2. However, I think this style of movement was probably always doable back in Chapter 1, but it just took a long time to get discovered.
I don't know about
so that's why I'm including it in the Chapter 1 part of this video. But with the first change of Chapter 2 in October of 2019,
the golden chapter. I love Chapter 2. I'm a Chapter 2 guy.
Now, this would actually become a trend for every single chapter.
I think like Chapter 2 we just had swimming. Only. I don't know.
Chapter going forward, where at least one new mechanic would be added per chapter, but unfortunately
I think the most movement updates that we got was back in Chapter 3. We got sliding, mantling, sprinting.
Pretty much just get worse as time goes on. Previously, if you fell off the map, you were pretty much just dead. And that mechanic felt a little outdated, so in Chapter 2, Fortnite added swimming as part of the massive overhaul to the game. Chapter 2 map introduced rivers, lakes, and oceans where players could swim, dive, and even fish for the first time. This water especially played a massive role in Chapter 2 Season 3, where the entire map was flooded, causing water levels to rise all over the map. Without swimming, this potentially could have been the worst season of all time. Swimming in its base form was just the same speed as running. However, by dolphin diving, players could both dodge shots from other players and increase their movement speed.
Very good mechanic, to be honest with you. Like, swimming was needed in Fortnite. It's very standard mechanic, to be honest
speed
with
at
you.
the same time. There have been very minimal changes to swimming since its introduction back in 2019.
I think no changes.
Kind of just one of those mechanics that probably should have been in the game from the start, and no one really ever will complain about.
That's what I
Swimming
said.
as a mechanic is a 10 out of 10. For the rest of
Yeah.
the chapter, the only movement change that was made was in
Oh,
chapter
the
2,
sand
season
tunnel?
5, where
No.
they added the seasonal mechanic of sand tunneling. It
Yeah.
allowed players to sink into the sand in the desert of the map and move quickly underground while being nearly invisible. Unfortunately, sand tunneling
It was too buggy. It was disabled for like half of the season.
was extremely buggy. Some players
Yeah.
could stay underground indefinitely and avoid damage, making them invincible. Other players could use the sand to glitch inside structures
Yeah.
or even go under the
I've
map.
actually done one of
Some
that
players
glitches.
would sink into the sand and never be able to get out, leaving them trapped. So because of all of these issues, Epic repeatedly disabled and re-enabled the features, and ultimately sand tunneling was just removed at the end of Season 5 and has never returned since. Cool idea, horrible execution, 3 out of 10 for sand tunneling. Continuing
yeah.
the trend of adding a new mechanic every chapter, Chapter 3 would introduce sliding, but this season it honestly wasn't really all that useful. Both
Yeah, chapter 3, season 1, we only got a sliding. And later on in the chapters, I think it was season 2 that we got mantling and sprinting at the same time because Zero Build was introduced.
crouch and slide are bound to the same button and cannot be split into different binds. In order to crouch, you must press the bind, and in order to slide, you need to hold it. However, the difference between holding the key and pressing the key is pretty small. So in times
Yeah.
where players are trying to be sneaky and make a little noise, a lot
They
of times instead they
slide
just
it.
slide about on the ground, which was very annoying. Oh boy, I hope they don't add a bunch of movement options in the future that all use the
Yeah.
same button and have no way to rebind them. That would be really annoying, wouldn't it? They really shouldn't do that. But in Season 1 of Chapter 3, there just really weren't that many applications for sliding when you're fighting other players. So it was mainly just used to rotate around the map a little bit faster by sliding down hills. However, with the addition of Tactical Sprint in the next season, sliding would become
Alright, tactical sprint made sliding 10 times better because it had more speed and it was just more speed. Yep.
much more useful. Tactical Sprint allows players to run faster than the default sprint for a short period, making rotations in combat a little bit more interesting. Also making any season prior to this look completely unwatchable because of how slow it looked. Fortnite would later go on just to rename this mechanic to sprinting, and I think the regular movement speed is now called running, with the never used forced walk option also being there. Players can only sprint for a certain period of time, as there's a new stamina bar that drains over time, which nearly all future mechanic would use. The real downside of this mechanic is that as you sprint, you lose the ability to shoot or build, and this is why sliding got such a massive buff with the addition of the tactical sprint feature. Now you could sprint and then slide, which maintains the increased movement.
I think tactical sprint was needed back in chapter 2. It's a very, very standard mechanic.
Speed, but allows you to build and shoot. This also does not use up large parts of your stamina like sprinting does. This means that while in close proximity to another player, you can sprint to increase your movement speed and then slide to dodge their shot and hit them back. Or you can do what many pro players do in in-game and sprint to increase their movement speed and then slide with that increased movement speed whilst tarping. So really you can shoot or build while moving quickly. I give sliding a 9 out of 10. But for sprinting, I already have a full video covering why I think most people should probably sprint less in fights and why I think the mechanic is overrated for being good at the game. But the TLDR is most people's mechanics get way worse when they sprint too much, but it's still a very welcome feature that speeds up the pace of the game, and the best players use it so well in fights. So I'm also giving a 9 out of 10 for sprinting too. But sprint was the only mechanic added in Chapter 3 Season 2. Now before this, the most common...
Alright, mantling in build mode, it's too annoying. Like there is people out there that they just mantle. And it's very annoying, especially in build fights. Like you're holding an angle, you're in height, and somebody just mantles up and shoots you. That's so annoying. Or it's just my skill issue, I don't know.
Phrases used by Fortnite players were things like full boxed, pieced, 200, but now all of a sudden it's I didn't mean to mantle there. This feature allows players to climb and pull themselves up onto ledges, enhancing vertical mobility and complementing other movement mechanics like tactical sprint. Given this was the first season that Fortnite added a zero build game mode, this feature was basically required to get around the map, and in the build mode,
like it was very necessary for zero build to have a movement like that. It was very necessary, so I think come on, it was
The
good.
feature is really punishing. There's a pretty considerable delay after you mantle where you cannot shoot or build. So if you just mantle into the face of someone, it's really easy to get shot while you're doing it. It's good for mobility, but it has a lot of downsides. The main problem with this mechanic is that it just had a ton of bugs, something that will become a bit of a trend going forward. The first was the auto mantle bug, where whenever you just approach the ledge, even if you were just walking backwards, it would just
It's an option in the settings, you can turn that off.
Automatically mantle you back up over and over again. And the most notorious bug was the one where you would mantle and it would just send you straight up into the sky. These bugs are pretty much all
okay. If a new mechanic on the release date doesn't have any bugs, it's not a new mechanic. Okay?
fixed now, and the only reason that people accidentally mantle now is because they have the mantle activation setting set to hold forward instead of hold jump. And in my opinion, I actually think mantling is overall really well balanced and is basically a required piece of movement. Now, when most people say, I didn't mean to mantle there, what they really meant is I didn't mean to hurdle there, which is a horrible feature which we will come back to later. For me, mantling gets an 8 out of 10. Now, there was actually a third movement mechanic added in this same season, which was the door bash. It allows players to break through doors by just sprinting straight into them. And the alternative would be to stand still, press the door open button, which would be kind of...
I never even thought about door bash being a new update. Wow. I thought it was just a part of sprinting.
Slow and clunky. Now, the door bash was introduced in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 2 in March of 2022. However, it was removed 2 months later due to, you guessed it, the bugs with it. There were a few bugs, but honestly the most common one is that you just sprint in the door and the feature just literally did not work. So after it was all fixed, it was re-added back in December of 2022 in Chapter 4. Outside of the bugs, I can't really say anything negative about this feature. 10 out of 10. And the final movement mechanic of Chapter 3 is the slide kick, which was added in the...
Okay, slide kick, it's very, very, very situational. It's very situational. 10 times out of 10 times you will miss it. Like, the guy is just standing there, you slide, he goes to the left or right. Like, it's... I don't know, it's very situational.
Final season in Season 4, and this mechanic kind of went completely unnoticed and underrated for a long time. This is a very small mechanic that was added to sliding that actually just has some insanely niche use cases. If a player makes contact with a structure while sliding, it will now deal 25 structure damage, and if you make contact with a player, it would deal 10 damage, but most importantly, knock them back. It took a while for competitive players to find a consistent use for this, but there was actually a lot. Firstly, if the player's wall is below 25 HP, you can sprint, jump, and slide. If you time this correctly, you can phase straight into the player's box.
Yeah, but if the guy has a great ping, it's probably not very useful.
Through the wall. But the most useful application of this was shown off at the 2023 FNCS Global Championship. Acorn and Cold were being contested off spawn by Andalex and Sato, and since Acorn's drop was slightly behind Sato's, he was able to land, slide, and then hit Sato, who was trying to open a chest, and completely knock him off the edge, wiping him out to fall damage. Now, this is a great strat if you're landing at a drop spot where there's one chest or floor spawn that's heavily contested, and it's pretty much always a good idea to just spam slide whenever you land, just in case someone else lands in the same tile as you, and then you can just knock them off the edge. I'll be honest, it's funny when this happens, but this mechanic is also just kind of cheesy, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Now, it's Chapter 4 was a lot of people's
5 out of 10? 5 out of 10? It's solid, yeah.
Favorite chapter. So it was only fitting that they add the worst movement mechanic of all time.
Oh my. Hurdling had a ton of bugs. You could fly 1,000 miles over the map. It would kick you out of the map. Like, everything. Every possible bug was with
hurdling. Well, there is actually another one that's a strong competition for it, but we'll get there later. Now, this just happened to Tayson in a $10,000 Fortnite tournament. He was hit low and escaped his box, but found that in front of him was a box that was not his. So he turns around and automatically hurdles over the wall into the other player's face, where he eventually would die. Now, the hurdle feature, despite being clearly one of the most beloved features of all time, is designed to get you through those awkward little windows on buildings that have always been difficult to climb through. You know, the ones where the top of them is slightly too low, so if you try to jump, you won't get in it, but the bottom of them is just too high to walk over, so now you can hurdle through those to get into them. It's a good idea because the most consistent way to get through these before was to build the cone, then edit one of the corners, and then crouch through it just at the right height. If you're in zero build mode, that's literally not possible to do. So hurdling is great. In theory, work that way at all. There are 2 options for making this activate. Hold forward and press jump. with the hold forward option, if you hold forward into a window, it does not hurdle, despite that being the entire point of the setting. In fact, a pop-up appears showing that the player needs to press jump in order to hurdle again, which is the complete other option that you did not select intentionally. So what about the press jump option? Well, if you stand at a window and press jump, the character jumps and he does not hurdle, despite the setting saying press jump to hurdle.
Okay. This guy hates hurdling. Hates it. And it's valid.
In fact, with both of these settings, you have to both press forward and then press jump, which is the exact same thing for both settings. The only thing this setting changes is that if you are sprinting towards a window, the hold forward option will automatically hurdle you through, whereas the press jump option will, well, of course, make you need to press jump in order to hurdle through. But the description for this setting does not mention sprinting anywhere. So basically, resub subscribers would never use this hold forward option because it just makes you automatically hurdle where you don't want to. So is this what happened to Tayson? No. If you're too close to a wall, because the game sees you sprinting and then pressing jump, it's going to automatically hurdle you rather than making you jump over it. However, there's an animation you cannot cancel when you hurdle, where...
Goddamn, I never heard so many negative things about hurdling. It is bad, okay? Don't get me wrong, it is bad. But this guy hates it. It's been 5 minutes and he's talking about hurdling.
As with jumping, you can build and shoot. This also happened to Malabuka here in the solo catch up game,
I think it happened
and
to
it's
everyone.
happened to Thomas HD in this clip as well.
Oh my
so there's
God,
a lot of situations where you just want to sprint jump, and instead you're just going to be hurdling over the wall and may die to fall damage or get shot because you can't build or shoot while doing that. A common scenario where hurdling will unintentionally activate is when a wall is on the
That was a bad clip. God damn.
side of your ramp and try to sprint jump over that. I feel like I've building PTSD whenever I have to change angles because I've just hurdled over this exact situation way too much. So at least it works for getting through windows, right? No, of course it doesn't. Don't be silly, man. If there's a cone at the other side of the window, your crosshair has to be almost diagonally above the cone in the top left or top right in order for you to be able to hurdle through this.
I did not know that. I did not know that, and this guy hates hurdling. Guy, dude, I am sorry in behalf of Epic Games that they added hurdling. I'm just sorry.
Why? I have no idea. If there's a ramp on the other side, you have to look in the exact same spot.
Dude,
However,
get over hurdling! Get over it!
Making it much more difficult. And if you're standing on the bottom of a ramp trying to go through a window, you'll repeatedly just get pushed back out through the window and be unable to hurdle whatsoever. All of these very impractical in a high-stress scenario where you're trying to run away from a player. And remember, this is forcibly bound to your jump button, meaning that if you mess up any of these, you're just going to be jumping on the spot and you're just going to be a sitting duck. The idea of the mechanic is phenomenal, but I've genuinely done more accidental hurdles than intentional, and the most common phrase out of my mouth when playing this game is I did not want to hurdle there, or I was trying to hurdle there. So hurdling is a solid 2 out of 10. Now,
why 2? Why not a 1 or a 0? You talked all of that about hurdling and then you give it a 2. What? At least give it a 1 or a 0. Minus 10,000, okay?
Definitely the most controversial change to the movement came in Chapter 5, when Fortnite overhauled the entire movement.
Oh my god, I still hate the new movement. I hate it. Just change it, reverse it, do something. I don't like it. I just don't like it.
Serious or not, one of the Fortnite goats, Tayson, actually said that my downfall started because of this movement change. The base running speed and crouching speed was lowered, and even though the actual sprint speed remained the same, the exaggerated new running animations made it feel like the player was moving slower. Gameplay generally just felt slow and sluggish, and the Fortnite competitive Twitter replies were just filled with people asking to revert this change. The developer in charge of these changes at Epic Games even tweeted about how excited he was about the changes, but he ended up being bombarded by hate from the community and eventually just
well deserved, and we as a community should still bombard this guy because this new movement, it's not good. I don't like it. I don't like it. Let's go.
Privated his page because he was getting spammed by so much negativity on the changes that were implemented to the game. Fortnite's a business, and they saw all of the
Valid crash out by the community. Valid.
Negative feedback. So after only a few days, the walking and crouching speeds were reverted to be closer to that of the previous chapters. However, they kept all of the newer animations. I honestly don't even really notice these changes that much now, and I don't think the current movement is bad at all. So I'm just giving this a 6 out of 10.
No,
This season also
no, not a 6 out of 10. 0. 0. Okay, zero.
brought the very first version of wall climbing, which added wooden
Wall
bars
climbing
to
is so
parts
unnecessary.
of the map and on player build structures. Players could now
So
repeatedly
unnecessary.
mantle up as many builds as they'd like in a row. I'll be completely honest, the only times this was ever used were in zero build off spawn fights, and if you needed to climb back up into a surge base. I don't have much more to add on this. There weren't really any cool plays I ever
And they did it, so many people did it with a sky base.
remember seeing done with this, so I'm just giving it a 3 out of 10. However,
No,
in chapter
1 out of
6,
10.
they completely revamped this
This guy is too generous. 3? No, a 2 or 1.
underwhelming mechanic and added 3 more, and yes, one of those being the most complained about mechanic of all time. Seeing that wall climbing was not that interesting, Fortnite removed the bars on player built structures and on buildings across the map, and instead added the ability to wall climb anywhere. In areas that are too high to mantle, you can now press jump again whilst against the wall, and you'll run 1 tile higher. This allows you to mantle over walls that are now 2 tiles high rather than just 1. This is really useful in endgames where you need to get out of an awkward spot, but the best use for this I've found so far is just avoiding zip lines. There are a lot of 2 tile high spots and locations like Mass Meadows where if you activate the zip line, everyone in a 2,000 meter radius will be able to hear you because the visual audio for these are so loud.
Okay.
So since
This guy has an issue with zip lines.
you can't build in some of these areas, wall climbing here allows you to move around these areas without being heard. Honestly, I think this is a cool feature. 8 out of 10. However,
Eight.
if you look more than 45
Eight.
degrees
8 was good. 8 was good.
away from the wall, you will not wall climb, and
Wall
instead
kick.
you will wall kick. Now
Yeah.
this is problematic because
I don't like wall kick. Like, I haven't used it that much. It's very situational. Like, it's not usable in fights. Not usually, at least. It's a cool feature, but on paper it looks good.
mantle, hurdle, wall climb, and wall kick are all set to the same bind, which is to jump. It's incredibly difficult to choose which one of these you want to do intentionally.
many
Take this
things on
clip from
space.
Dollar, where he wants to mantle up onto the player above him, but instead he wall kicks off the wall to his left and dies. Or this clip from Rip, where he tries to jump over a small ledge in order to get an ammo crate, but instead wall kicks and dies. Or this clip from Vanya Boo Boo, where he tries to sprint jump, but a wall is
That's a username?
placed directly in front of him as he does this, so he wall kicks and dies. Or this clip from Moans where he tries to leave the box using a typhoon blade, but he accidentally wall kicks and dies. Or this clip from Toronto who wants to mantle, but the other player places a wall, so he accidentally wall kicks and dies. Or this clip from Zen where I honestly don't really know what happens here, but he definitely wall kicks and dies. If you do it right, there are a ton of sick mechanics you can pull off in creative. Kova actually did a great video where he showcased a ton of these mechanics and some more advanced ways that you can animation cancel with them, but unfortunately the vast majority of these are highly impractical in a competitive setting, and honestly I'm yet to see any real sick clips done with the wall kick at all. I've just seen clips of people dying using it. I actually love the wall kick mechanic because I think it has a ton of potential, but everyone really just hates it because it always activates it.
It's so, like, impractical. Impractical? Is that a word? I don't know. I don't know.
The worst time because it's set to a bind that 7 other actions are set to, so I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. The next because they increase your jump height from half a tile to around 1 whole tile, you can do side jumps to the layer above you without even standing on a cone or a ramp. This can be really useful when trying to escape a box and get away from someone who's aggressing you. But this is another feature that's also bound
On space, yeah. too many features bounded on space and jumping.
To the jump key. So despite the fact that I do enjoy going so every time I do one of these, I've got to give the ledge jump a 4 out of 10. And
no, come on! Ledge jump is good. What? It's not that bad. Not a 4. You like the difference between hurdling and ledge jump. It's 2 points. What? No. Just no. Stop. No. Like at least a 6 or a 7.
Finally, the last mechanic added in Chapter 6 is the ground roll. Now, if my calculations are correct, I estimate that around 94% of all ground...
I never died to a ground roll. There is a problem with your game.
Rolls ever done in the history of Fortnite are entirely accidental. Now, the purpose of the roll is to slightly recharge the stamina bar after jumping. So by pressing the jump button while you're in the air just before you land, or by holding it, you'll ground roll, which will recharge a small amount of your stamina, allowing you to sprint for a little longer. This was actually one of the mechanics that I was the most excited about when I saw it first added to the game, as I thought I'd constantly be able to do some cool parkour moves inside the box while box playing. To activate the ground roll, the circumstances are actually quite specific. You need to press or hold the jump button right before you hit the ground. However, you have to either be jumping from over 1 tile high or have just wall kicked or ledge jumped. Now surely there would never be any issues with binding a 6th mechanic to the jump key and having no way to rebind it. Surely not. So here JKC tries to mantle. However, because he was facing a different direction, this wall kicked him. However, because he was holding jump when he was trying to mantle, he then rolled when he landed, and yeah, you see what happened after that.
That clip, it's so unfortunate, I can't even explain it. Like, the dude just... He was not in control of his game, okay? That was
in this clip, Blast tried to sprint and mantle on the underside of this door, but because he was at the edge of the floor when he jumped, he activated the ledge jump, which made him fly further and miss the ledge to mantle. But remember though, he was holding his jump bind because he was trying to mantle, so when he lands on the ground, he rolls backwards to his death. Oh yeah, if you're falling and try to mantle onto something, but your character doesn't need to mantle because you actually end up landing on it, this will cause you to roll, which could also cause you to fall to your death. Now, if you have a relatively bad drop, what a lot of players will want to do is crouch to slide and then jump to propel themselves forward.
You know what I like to do when like gliding and hitting the ground? I like to bunny hop. Do you remember the bunny hop? You used to like spam space and boom, bunny hop. That was so cool. It's not even possible, I think.
Forward. However, if you time that mildly wrong, you're just going to roll, which has also caused a lot of deaths. Now, I thought this mechanic would be really useful in the inside of a box when you're trapped with another player, but since you first have to wall kick in order to be able to roll, there are almost no useful scenarios where this is applicable in a fight. For the roll, I'm giving it a 2 out of 10, but if this gets another bind, I'm putting this up to a 5 out of 10.
No. Just give it a 1. And guys, alright people, this was the video. This was a whole evolution of Fortnite movement. Thank you for watching this video. And guys, by the way, the original video link will be down in the description. And go subscribe to this guy. This guy makes great videos. I like them. And guys, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next video and peace out.